Oh, come on now.
I'm doing my low
Did you English? You
English.
Oh.
I don't know, right, that was what it was.
That's all right. That's all right. Oh, no, what's that? Who's blanking? Right, so there's that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look at this.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting here.
You know, I said I told you I didn't in on any of the future.
Okay. Alrighty. I'm sure it did.
But
The other version, this one cracked.
okay, so this is
Oh my God.
I guess. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
because after Thursday, I'm supposed to go.
See, now I'm looking at all these pictures and like,
Well, that's what I said. Like, a good point.
I just remember, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was in the park. It was like,
Really? Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Tuesday, July 22nd Planning Commission work session to order. It's not listed on the agenda, but if everyone would please rise with me and state the Pledge of Allegiance, that'd be great.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one item for discussion this evening during our work session, the draft comprehensive plan. We'll have a presentation from staff, and this is informal, so if there are questions, Mike okayed that we can ask them during the presentation, but do not get too derailed, as there may be an answer further in his presentation. So with that, Mike, I'll give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you. So I have about 28 slides. What I tried to do is pull out what I thought was of importance. There might be something in here that I didn't identify. Certainly you can't cover every detail or even most of the details in a 30 to 45 minute presentation. If there's something you want me to cover, please say something. If you have a question, certainly try to answer that. I just try to do my best to identify what I thought would be important to you in this presentation. The slides will have references to page numbers. Hopefully you all brought your documents. If not, I have an extra one you can borrow. Does everybody have the document with them? Okay. So feel free to take notes, ask questions, what have you. So, it's hard to talk about the comprehensive plan without talking about the proposed comprehensive plan without talking about the current comprehensive plan. On July 29th, date of the public hearing, you'll be asked to adopt a new comprehensive plan and at the same time repeal the existing comprehensive plan. So there might be, you might have questions about how the proposed one relates to the existing one. I actually have an extra copy here that if you wanted, it's just here if anybody wants to look at it. I don't want to distract you too much from the slides, but it's there if you want it. Community development plan, the last update was in March 2008. And there's a land use map. Quite a lot of things have happened since 2008. 2008, 2009, that was really the time of the housing crash and the start of a major recession. And the world changed after that. If you look out at I don't have the ability to point here with this thing that I have in my hand here, but if you look out in the southwest corner of the planning area or the city limits, there's a lot of yellow, which identifies low-density residential. That's near the intermodal. Certainly, with the intermodal and the impact of the intermodal, a lot of that's not really viable for residential development, or it's not really an envisioned realistic land use for that area. That's just an example of how things have changed and why there's a need for an update to the development plan map and the community development plan. So, for you to page 2 of the plan, purpose of the plan. Comprehensive plan is a policy guide for future decision making. It's not intended to be a static document. It's intended to be reviewed and updated. And actually, Kansas statutes requires that a city review its comprehensive plan annually. I took this quote out of the document on page 2. Adoption of this document is not the end of the planning process, but the beginning of an ongoing implementation effort. So how will it be used and implemented? Someone asked me that question, and I was glad they asked, because that's really important. This plan is not going to be much good if it's not implemented. Generally, it informs the annual budget process, guides decisions about capital expenditures through the adoption of a capital improvement program. It guides changes in development regulations, primarily the subdivision and zoning ordinances. It guides decisions about land use applications. So when someone applies for a rezone or a subdivision plat, we look to the comprehensive plan for guidance. And actually, some of the decision criteria, one of them is consistency with the comprehensive plan. It informs decisions about service levels and programming. Process. The process that has been employed in this comprehensive plan, we hired a professional planning consultant, Housel Levine & Associates. They've done a lot of comprehensive plans around the country, and they have gotten very good at doing outreach in a very efficient and far-reaching and effective way. A lot of that's online. It's through the creation of the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. 2 commissioners on the dais tonight sat on that committee, and so the Planning Commission was represented on that committee along with a lot of other citizens. There were workshops held. Initially there was a workshop to identify issues, to identify potential long-term or broad goals. There was also a visioning workshop held at the end of January. There have been a lot of opportunities for people to be engaged. Process, this is typically what happens in development of a plan. There's data collection, outreach and issues identification, analysis of existing conditions. Then they formulate a vision, goals, and objectives, draft plan elements and the document, vetted by the CPAC, Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, and staff. That's what's happened over the past 30 days, 30 to 60 days. We've really looked closely at the document. It's amazing how you can review a document, though, so many times and still miss typographical errors, so that doesn't mean there aren't a few of those in here. But those will be identified and taken care of. And then the review and adoption process, and that's where we're at right now, and it's really feels good to be here after a year. Core themes of the plan on page 2. If someone said, "What's the plan about?" If someone approached me on the street and said, "What's the plan about?" Can you tell me about the plan? Page 2 pretty much says it. This kind of is a broad way to state what the plan's about. Housing variety, local employment growth, image and identity, capitalizing on regional transportation assets, fiscal sustainability, a strong city center, green connections. And we'll get into that in a little more detail. Planning jurisdiction. If you look at page 9, under planning jurisdiction, this refers to the map on the previous page, on page 8. The comprehensive plan addresses issues within the municipal boundaries of Gardner as well as unincorporated areas adjacent to the city which form the planning boundary. Kansas State Statute, Chapter 12, Section 747 allows cities to plan for areas within the city as well as unincorporated territory adjacent to existing city limits that form the total community to which the city is a part. Kansas cities don't have a lot of control, a lot of oversight of what happens outside the city limits, but we can plan for areas outside the city limits. And so, those areas are included in the planning area. The southern boundary of the planning area is 199th Street. 199th Street's interesting because there's an overpass on 199th at I-35. So, and they're in the long-range county transportation plan. The plan is for 199th Street to be expanded substantially, and so there could be development pressures, influences along 199th. Existing plans on pages 10 and 11. The importance of this is that there are a lot of other plans that have been done. This doesn't necessarily